Blending for EBRD is working with donors, where we're mobilizing our financing in the forms of loans or equity, and donors are actually mobilizing their financing in partnership with us to achieve certain outcomes. So blending can be an investment grant to an infrastructure project like water and wastewater in a poor country like Tajikistan, where the donor's money, like the EU money, is used just to reduce the capital costs and reduce the overall costs of a project in a low-income country. Or blending can also be something a little more sophisticated, like risk sharing, or what the EU calls risk capital, whereby EBRD is putting our funds at risk in partnership with a private sector participant, and the EU is putting its funds at risk to mobilize higher levels of financing and higher levels of economic development. I would say that the biggest advantage of this is when ourselves and the European Union work together in a blending instrument, we achieve, number one, a lot more financing. For example, in our low-income countries, the EU has become our biggest partner since 2008, since it's created the Neighbourhood Investment Facility and the Investment Facility for Central Asia. And as a result of that, we're providing financing 3 times the level of financing we did before. So number one, a lot more. Number two, by working together, we have a larger collective voice in a place like Tajikistan or Georgia or Moldova. We're in front of the government itself because a lot of our financing is tied to reforms in particular areas. So we're speaking the exact same language, delivering the exact same message, and hopefully getting a very similar outcome from the local authorities. My advice to the European Union in terms of blending, to be clear, EBRD has been partnering with donors since 1991 in blending instruments, but very active with the EU in the last 5 years, since 2008. My advice to the European Union would be around threefold. Number one, you must actually identify what is the specific development objective you're actually trying to achieve. Because, for example, in the private sector versus infrastructure, you would have a completely different blending instrument to achieve that outcome. Number two, we must be focused on types of financing activity that is additional and complementary to what is available from other particular sectors. And number three, the EU should be looking for leverage as much as it possibly can. In our particular case, the EU gets leverage in terms of financing amount. For example, for approximately every euro of funding that we've been getting from the EU, we've been putting 10 euros of funding of our own funds at risk. That's leverage, but also leverage from an institutional perspective. For example, the EBRD, we have offices in every single country. In every single country, we have bankers on the ground working with the private sector, financial institutions, and the local authorities to identify projects. In a small country like Turkmenistan, we have 6 professionals there working every day to identify viable projects. And in Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic, we have 8 and 10. So in EBRD's case, leverage is also from our physical presence in low-income countries. In our experience as EBRD in general, but also in blending instruments, you need to avoid primarily those public sector activities where really you expect or you hope to get a certain level of traction in making reforms, when in reality you're probably not going to achieve those types of reforms. So in the public sector, we are only engaged in those particular projects and in those particular countries where we actually know, or not know, we have a high level of confidence that the public sector will make the certain reforms we're looking for. Our experience has been maybe in the first 10 years of our existence, too much of our time and energy and financing and blending was spent in those sectors where we wouldn't get enough reforms out of the public sector, excuse me. One thing that was very beneficial from an EU perspective is that you had quite a few representatives from the member states there asking us questions directly instead of through the European Commission, providing strong evidence that the member states are very interested to ensure that there's good value for money coming out of the taxpayers' funds. And I can tell you for certain at the European Commission level that the proof or the evidence that we need to provide to the European Union, the European Commission officials, to evidence a need for mobilizing financing in a particular sector is getting higher and higher and stronger. And as a result, and secondly, that the results that we need to show, the outcomes and the outputs of our collective financing need to be much more rigorous and need to be much more development and orientation. And that spillover is coming from the member states to the Commission and coming down to people like EBRD, and ultimately that will be in everyone's best interest. The European Commission and the European Union have been excellent in terms of developing new, innovative windows of activity. And for our particular purpose at EBRD, it's really been our poorest countries of Central Asia and the Eastern Partnership, where we're mobilizing the majority of the funds now from the European Union, which just as recently as 5 years ago wasn't available. And as I had mentioned earlier, the financing activity has gone up threefold as a result of that.